Hello. All right, I'm here. I'll wait for a few people. And I'm going to start by telling you guys a story. So let's see who's going to join us. Great. I see a few of you. Hope everybody had a good yesterday and excited about heading into a long weekend. I love long weekends and we get an extra day. And then after the long weekend, on Tuesday is Mr. Wonderful's birthday. So we're going to be celebrating him. I'll remind you so you can give him some kind words too. That always means a lot to him. Okay, so here's a story that I want to start with. And this is a fun one, and there's a reason for it that I'll tell you afterwards. So, the girls, I always remember things by about how old the girls were. There's a 10-year spread between my oldest and my youngest. And I think the youngest was probably about 5. So the oldest was probably about 15, there and there. Maybe a little younger than that even. We were at the beach and we were staying at a friend's house. They weren't there. We just had their house. And the man owned these. All right, come on, brain, kick in. I'm like, blah. The man whose house we were in, he owned some antique fishing rods. I didn't even know that fishing rods could be antique. So these were very high-end, very expensive fishing rods. And the house that he was allowing us to stay in for a vacation at the beach was on the bay. And if you're used to the Gulf Coast, you know that there are these barrier islands. Well, this was a barrier island, Holiday Isle, for those of you that know the Destin area. And between the island and the regular coast, there are these channels, and they build all these homes right there on the channels, and they go in with dredging machines and they dredge really deep so that people can literally pull their yacht up right behind their house on like by a deck. So he had a yacht with a 2-story deck, and so the girls would go down on the lower dock or deck and fish with what we didn't know were these very expensive antique fishing rods. And we would be up on the upper deck and looking down, watching them. And there was this crane, like the bird with the really long, thin legs that can fly and a big beak. And it would come fly around that area and stand and watch the girls fish. And I think we bought them these little bitty, they had bait. So they're fishing with bait. They put the bait on the hook and they cast it out. And so the bay and the channel between the backs of the houses and where the yachts were parked was like a 1-lane road. Imagine a 1-lane road. It's, maybe 25 to 50 feet across, probably 50 feet across, and very, very deep. So at least, at least 30 feet deep. And, murky water, because this was the brackish water between the bay and the ocean. Okay, so they're fishing, they're using their bait, and they also have a big net that was on a pole, and we would use this net to, catch the fish at the end of the hook on the hook. So you wouldn't have to, if you caught a big fish, you would be able to swoop that big net up under it to hold it while you took it off the hook. So the girls, I don't remember which one was actually fishing, probably Promise, and they threw out the the rod, threw the rod, cast the rod is the word I'm looking for, cast the rod caught a fish. So we're like, yay! And we're looking down from above, good job. And they're reeling that fish in. And it was a fish that was maybe this big, it's not very big. They pull the fish in, and they were like, wow, we don't want to touch the fish to get it off the hook. So they laid the expensive antique rod on the deck, and the little bitty fish is on the hook, kind of flopping around on the deck. And so Johnny begins to make his way down to the lower deck to help them take the fish off the hook. Meanwhile, the crane, the bird who's watching, decides it wants that fish. So it swoops down right in front of the girls, and I'm watching from up above. Swoops down, grabs the fish in its beak, and starts flying across the channel there, the channel of water. So about halfway across the channel, of course, the bird couldn't support the weight. And we realized, I'm watching this happen in real time, he has the fish, which is connected to the hook, which is connected to this antique fishing rod, and connected to the handle of the antique fishing rod is this long pole with a big net on it. So it had gotten tangled in the rod. So the bird has the fish, the rod, and the net with the long pole. My brain is slow this morning. Okay, so it drops it in the middle of the channel, like in the deepest part of it, into the water. The bird didn't get any of it. So we're just all dumbfounded that this just happened. And then I realized, wow, we just lost the man who we love, and he's been so generous to let us be here in his house. We just lost his fishing rod and his net. We can replace the net, but what are we going to do about this fishing rod? I mean, literally, we went to the Yellow Pages at the time. There were no other way to look up numbers. Google was not a part of our lives. So get out the Yellow Pages. I'm looking. Can we hire a diver? Johnny, who is not a diver, he gets out there in some goggles, and he's trying to, swim down low enough. I mean, he said the water was just no visibility. There was no chance of us by ourselves getting this rod back. And we still had, I think days left in our vacation. So no more allowing the kids to fish and trying to figure it out. We're literally praying about it. Do we tell him that we lost the rod? Do we try to buy another one to replace it? So I called someone who would know and asked, about the rod. Should we get another one? What should we do? Should we tell him? I mean, we were going to tell him, but what should we tell him, and when should we tell him? And she said, this is really bad because this is an antique fishing rod. I'm like, oh, you're kidding me. So it had been like 2 or 3 days at this point. So Johnny is still fishing. He didn't let the girls fish anymore after that because of obvious reasons, but he's still fishing with another rod. And again, we're all watching. I think I was up on the upper deck again. He's fishing by himself, and he casts the rod. He's got bait on it. He casts the rod, and he caught a fish. And we're like, whoa, we think this is a really big fish. The rod was bending, and he's having to really work hard to pull this fish in. And this fish starts swimming up the channel and then down the channel to the other side and then back down. Like 4 or 5 times the fish is swimming really far both directions. And Johnny's just pulling for all he's worth to try to get this fish in. When he finally gets the fish in, it's so heavy. The fish comes in. It's probably only about this big. It's not as big as how difficult it was to get it in. And then all of a sudden we realize that connected to the fishing line of this other fishing rod was the previous rod still connected to the net with the long pole. The new fish that he caught, the bigger fish that he caught, had gone deep to the bottom of the channel and had tangled the fishing line in the previous rod, reel, and net. And Johnny pulled up not just this fish that he caught, but the whole thing that he had lost before. Isn't this the craziest fish story? Like, this is our fish story that our family tells. And so now when we go back, one of the things that my dad loves to do, my mom and dad, is we'll rent a pontoon boat for the day. And we drive this boat into this whole area, and we love to go see all those big, beautiful homes from the back where the yachts are parked. And we always pass the home where we stayed, and we tell the story of what God did. I mean, it was amazing what played out. I mean, what are the odds of that? There are no odds of it. It was a God story. It was a God story. God was telling our family a story that we would never forget and that we pass down, and we will tell others and tell our grandchildren one day. And so what I want to talk to you about today is just this idea of our Father is a father, and fathers and mothers are about legacy and generations. And when a father and a mother are in a position of having a healthy perspective of life and family, they think legacy, they think inheritance, they think heritage, they think, what have I received that I can pass on? What do I want to gain so that I can pass on as an inheritance? How do I steward what was given me? How do I teach the next generation to steward what is being given to them? And my parents have really done an amazing job of not only modeling that for our family, but they've been a part of teaching a class where they teach other couples and families how to pass on that heritage and legacy, specifically by being ready, being prepared for whenever it's your time to go, that you've left things in order for those who come after you. My parents, who are not going anywhere anytime soon, they have shown us a whole set of documents and notebook. It literally planned out their funeral so that we wouldn't even have to think about it. Like what was important to them, that we celebrate about their lives, and what part they're just leaving up to us, who to call for different things related to their finances and their house being in order, and everything to make the transition from generation to generation the most smooth, peaceful, clear, and honoring as possible. They are literally wanting to honor us in their passing on, their graduation to heaven. I mean, I could cry thinking about it. It just blows my mind, the thought. And so many of us, death is such a scary subject, and because we don't have control over it, we don't want to, spend too much time thinking about it or writing about it. And just the time that they've taken is such an example to me of how our Father, Papa God, thinks about generations. And I couldn't possibly cover all of that in one day. This is our last day in the month of May that we'll be talking about Papa as God as Papa on the mountain of family. So I just wanted to end this month with this, just a reminder. There's studies that you can go into on your own, but God is a God of generations, of legacy, of heritage, of inheritance. He's known as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This in itself speaks of generations, 3 generations there, of the covenant and promises that he made to Abraham that he fulfilled through Isaac and through Jacob. And then it even goes beyond that. Through Jacob, there were the 12 tribes. Jacob, of course, wrestled with God and became Israel. And Israel had 12 sons. And these 12 sons are literally the 12 tribes of Israel to this day, that many in the Jewish race can trace their lineage back to. We know that in the Old Testament, there are record upon record upon record of lineage and who begat who begat who. And then we read that now and we're like, who cares? We don't even know, 2 generations back. And I believe that as the kingdom comes to earth, that is going to be restored to families. We're going to see much more of this understanding and valuing of legacy. Now, you have the counterfeit. I believe it's the counterfeit because I'm a little suspicious about the whole, well, I won't name the name, but these different companies where you can send in a blood sample and it tells you, great things have come out of that. We have family members that have found family they didn't know that they had through companies like that. I just get concerned about who owns the, all of the information that they get from our DNA. Anyway, maybe I'm paranoid. But I believe that knowing more about those who came before you is going to become more and more valued to us. And, I want everything that I say right now to be on the backdrop of, if you don't have, there are many people that don't have any more living family. They don't have any more parents that are still living, and they don't have children. And I just want to reiterate the importance of, we have a spiritual family, we have a spiritual legacy. And the reason why the natural is important is because it points to the spiritual or the supernatural. And the supernatural and the spirit side of things always supersedes the natural. So having a spiritual family is more important and more of a legacy and more of a heritage than even having a natural family. The reason why the natural is so valuable is because of what it represents. It represents the spiritual legacy and inheritance that we have. So you have a father, you have a family, you have brothers and sisters, you have spiritual moms and dads, and you have a legacy in those that you pour your life into. So don't let this kind of water down for you any aspect of who and how our God is, a God of generations. You are a part of those generations, even if you never have children. Hear that and let that sink into your spirit. But those of us that do have children, we have a responsibility and a privilege that comes with that, because it is a mirror image of the spirit realm, where we have a father who cares for his children. So we are parents who care for our children, generation to generation. I believe that covenant, God is a God of covenant. Covenant is the ultimate expression of the unconditional love of a parent, and specifically of our Father. And so when you see this covenant that happens in marriage, it is a representation of the covenant that God has made with himself about us. And so Jesus models that in the marriage to the bride of Christ, to the body of Christ, the bride, us, his sons and daughters. I believe we're going to understand this mystery so much more on the other side of eternity. But the word covenant is just so huge. I can't even begin to get into it today. But it's basically, promise that God makes to himself. And I'm going to read a few verses related to this in just a second. But that picture of unconditional love, when you think about two spouses, a husband and a wife, a man and a woman, covenanting together to belong only to one another for the rest of their lives, that covenant is a reflection. And why it is so solemn and sober is it's a reflection of something that in the spirit realm is huge. In the spirit realm, it is God's covenant to himself about us. And so we get to do certain things in the natural that reflect the spirit realm. And that is why that mystery of marriage and the mystery of even the other covenants that we make are obviously when you the point of sex obviously is that it happened only in the context of a covenant relationship, marriage, between a man and a woman. And in that context, you are not only covenanting to that other person, but you're covenanting that the fruit of your marriage, which is children, comes underneath that covenant. They are a part of the covenant that you made to one another that is precious and holy because it's a covenant that reflects something holy in the spirit realm that God invented, that God initiated, this thing of swearing yourself, saying, my word is my word and it means something. So we covenant in a sense because our children are birthed ideally under the covenant of marriage. And so we covenant to raise them and love them unconditionally. The same way that we love our spouse unconditionally. The same way that God has covenanted to love us unconditionally. And a covenant can have conditions. So we know that, for example, a covenant in a marriage, the only way that biblically a covenant is to be broken or can be broken is when one of the spouses commits adultery. Okay, so I'm not going into all of that and reasons for divorce. I'm just giving you kind of a flyover view of this idea of God as a God of covenants. I want to read to you, I'm going to fly through 14 different verses related to God being a God of generations and covenant. Genesis 9:12, God said, "This is the sign of the covenant, the rainbow, which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations." Genesis 17:7, "I will establish my covenant between me and you and your descendants after you in their generations for an everlasting covenant to be God to you and your descendants after you." Genesis 50:23, Joseph sought Ephraim's children to the third generation. The children of Machir, I don't know how to say that right, the son of Manasseh, were also brought up on Joseph's knees. Exodus 3:15, moreover, God said to Moses, "Thus you will say to the children of Israel, the Lord God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial to all generations." Exodus 12:14, "This day shall be for you a memorial day." That's what we've got coming up on Monday, Memorial Day. "And you will keep it as a feast to the Lord throughout your generations, as a statute forever. You will keep it as a feast." Leviticus 23:43, "Your generations may know that I made the people of Israel dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God." Joshua 22:28, "Therefore we said that it will be when they say this to us or to our generations in time to come, that we may say, here is the replica of the altar of the Lord which our fathers made, though not for burnt offerings nor for sacrifices, but it is a witness between you and us." It's a witness. 2 Kings 10:30, "And the Lord said to Jehu, because you have done well in doing what is right in my sight, and have done to the house of Ahab all that was in my heart, your sons will sit on the throne of Israel to the fourth generation." Esther 9:28, "That these days should be remembered and kept throughout every generation, every family, every province, every city, that these days of Purim should not fail to be observed among the Jews, and that the memory of them should not perish among their descendants. Psalm 22:30, a posterity shall serve him. It will be recounted of the Lord to the next generation. Psalm 49:11, their inner thought is that their houses will last forever, their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own names. Psalm 78:4, I'm almost done. We will not hide them from our children, telling to the generation to come the praises of the Lord and his strength and his wonderful works that he has done. Joel 1:3, tell your children about it, and let your children tell their children and their children the next generation. Ephesians 3:21, to him be glory in the church by Christ to all generations forever and ever. All right, few things I want to highlight. Starting with the rainbow. God took what was already existing in the throne room. Revelations tells us that there is a rainbow around the throne of God. And he took that rainbow that already existed in the throne room and he put the ability of that rainbow to occur over and over and over again from generation to generation. We serve an ancient God who's telling an ancient story. And we are each a part of this ancient story, this covenant that it's raining right now outside of where I live here in Nashville. And probably when we're done, I'll go out there and be able to see a rainbow because of the fact that it existed in heaven and God covenanted with himself and said, I will never again start from scratch all over again and take out an entire generation of people. I mean, we still know the story of Noah after all of these hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, generation after generation after generation, because of the rainbow. God wanted to make sure that this story was passed down. My point with that is that God is telling a story. We're each a part of the story. We each have stories to tell. Stories are part of the narrative, part of the generation. One of the things that we bought my parents this last Christmas is it's something online called Storyworth. Storyworth. It's really a great gift for people, but you have to make sure the timing is right to give to someone because sometimes it's not. But Storyworth sends my parents an email once a week and it asks them a very simple question about their past to just trigger memories. And it's, some are just surface questions, some are deeper. And I can go in there, anyone in our family can go in there and add questions or change questions. And it sends them a question once a week and they have the opportunity to write the answers to the questions in story form. And it can be just a few sentences or something long. And this company, Storyworth, takes all of those stories from the entire year and compiles them into a book. They can also add a picture or two per story that goes along with whatever the question is they've answered. And it compiles them. So at the end of the year, the idea is that this company sends us and anyone in our family that wants a copy of the book. There are stories that we need to remember from previous generations, not only of our family members, but we need to know the stories of what God did and our response to them. And one of the most precious things that I have from my mom, my first birth mom, who died of cancer when I was 12, is I have all these notebooks. She didn't really know that she was dying because she was just standing in so much faith. I mean, I think maybe an aspect of her did, but she wanted to stand in faith. So there aren't like specific stories, but she took copious notes of things that she was praying about, things that God was speaking to her, things that she journaled. And my adopted mom, Mama Cindy, she, who I call Mom, my mom and my dad saved all of this, and it's so precious to my sister, my older sister, and I, and even my younger sister. And I have a desire when I have time one day, I want to compile a lot of those. So the scriptures that were important to her and the notes she took, we have, to pass on to our future generations. I want to stir in you this thinking of we want to reflect our papa and think generationally, think stories. I told you the story at the beginning, and if you came in late, go back and listen to the story. It's a really cool fishing story at the beginning. But it's through stories like that that we remember the goodness of God. Many of you, maybe you didn't have that, but you remember like that one time that you had a grandmother who was praying for you. That's part of your inheritance. That is part of the legacy that you have. What's the song that Brandon Lake sings now about talking to Jesus? I think it's called Talking to Jesus. It's so good. It just talks about how one generation saw the next generation, and now for his son, he wants to model what it looks like to talk to Jesus. And I'm going to leave you with this one verse, Psalm 145, verse 4. This is from the Passion Translation. Generation after generation will declare more of your greatness and declare more of your glory. I love that. More of your greatness and more of your glory. When you see evidence of his greatness and you see evidence of his glory, remember it. Write it down. Pass it down to the next generation. Tell the stories. This may sound like a rant or a side thing, but TikTok and Reels and this short, quick 20-second sound bites, it literally is wiring the next generation's brains to have no attention span whatsoever. And evidently, statistics show that quick move on to the next information, move on to the next picture, move on to the next thing, that actually produces a dopamine rush in our brain that feels good. And if you do that even late at night, it actually keeps you awake. It stimulates your brain like in a way that other things can't and don't. And it doesn't allow you, especially as a young person, to allow your brain to develop to have deeper thoughts, longer conversations, a long attention span, and it's really damaging. And I believe that the one of the reasons the enemy wanted to come in that way against the younger generation. Every generation has things it has to overcome, but this is something significant that our young people are going to have to overcome, because it undermines their ability to hear the longer stories from the older generation. It undermines their capacity to think long term. It really does. It's a serious, significant thing. And as an older generation, we're not going to judge it. We're going to ask God for the solutions, and we're going to pray and declare their freedom from it. Because the generations before us that looked at us when we were young, they saw the things that we were going to have to overcome, and they prayed us through it. They prayed us through it. We need to pray the younger generation through the things, not judge them, but pray them through it and bring truth as we can to the areas that they need to hear truth of what is holding them back. And we're having to learn to tell our stories quicker. We're having to meet them in the midst of where they are. I can think of all kinds of examples of how that was done for our generation and the things that we were hung up on, but I won't go there right now. We're way out of time. So the songs that I have for you, I have 2 songs for you today. God of Generations by Jonathan and Emily Martin. God of Generations by Jonathan and Emily Martin. Such a sweet song. I had actually never heard of them, and I saw they have a bunch of other songs, so I'm excited about hearing some of their other music now that I found this song. And then Stephanie Gretzinger has an amazing, sweet, powerful song called No One Ever Cared for Me Like Jesus, and it is also speaking into this generational perspective. No One Ever Cared for Me Like Jesus by Stephanie Gretzinger. All right, so both of those songs, the scripture, everything, if you watch on YouTube, you have to look right underneath the video where there's a drop, little tiny arrow that's pointing down. Click on that arrow, and down will come a description of everything that I just told you. That's where you find the names of the songs. Some people ask and they don't realize that that description is there. So click on that. On Facebook and on Instagram, it's in my post or in the title part. All right. I'm going to take Monday off as Memorial Day, and I love that also about God, that He is a God of feasts and celebrations, and feasts and celebrations help us remember. Birthdays help us remember things we love about that person. You know, our American holidays, those are important because they root us and ground us to our history, and we're seeing more than ever the importance of that. And we do need a better, proper perspective on history as it relates to minorities and things that were written out of history that we need to remember, but we also need to remember the things that we've overcome and things that we have improved in our generations. And so I think there's room for more feasts, more celebrations, more days to remember, those to be added to our traditions. And I think it's good to, even in your own family, add in maybe even consider the biblical feasts. If not that, then decide what are the memorials of your family, things that you know that God did. Make it fun, connect it to food and entertainment and rest so that your kids want to remember and they want to celebrate. I plan on doing that with our grandkids, and we have one grandson right now who's not old enough yet for us to do that with, but we will be. Let's see, there was one last thing I was going to say. Oh, so the month of June, starting on Tuesday when I'm back with you, we will switch to God as creator on the mountain of arts and entertainment. God as creator on the mountain of arts and entertainment. And I am so excited about giving you some kind of homework assignments through next month that are going to draw on the creativity that God has put in you. And we're going to continue kind of where we left off today in this understanding of feasts and celebrations, because that is a part of the mountain of arts and entertainment. I have the hardest time saying that word, entertainment. Anyway, okay. Lord, we thank you for this month of just getting to feast on who you are as our Father and Papa. And would you just water those seeds and solidify the ground that we've taken in our hearts and our lives this month as we've focused on who you are as a good Father. And we want to continue in that, and we want to continue in the generational thinking that you have given us the capacity to think with. And teach us, speak to each of us throughout this weekend going into Memorial Day. What does it mean to pass down that legacy and that narrative from one generation to the next? Teach us how to steward the covenant God that you are. We love you so much. We receive your love right now. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Thanks for staying with me a little longer this time. And enjoy your long weekend. And I guess that's all. I think there's another Chosen episode if anybody wants to watch that over the weekend. Oh, and if you haven't taken me up on it, the movie Free Burma Rangers, I think it's only on Amazon Prime, but so you might have to pay a little something for it. It's worth it. It is worth it, and the money will go to a very good cause. Free Burma Rangers. Watch it this weekend. It is an encounter with God. It's a documentary. You're going to start watching it and kind of be like, oh, why am I watching this? Just hang in there to the end. It is life-changing. So enjoy your weekend and love you very much, and we'll see you on Tuesday.